The last shift, it was supposed to be her last shift. Erica had counted the hours for days, ready to leave the dusty dollar store behind for good. She was done with broken shelves, flickering lights, and the stale air that clung to her clothes long after. She went home. The store sat in the corner of a dying strip mall, forgotten by most and ignored by the rest. Only 2 employees worked nights, Erica and Dale. Dale rarely spoke. He just moved through the aisles like a shadow, watching the cameras, watching the mirrors. But tonight Dale was late. The manager had left early, muttering about Christmas Eve plans, and the cold wind outside had begun to howl through the cracked glass. Near aisle 5, Erica stood at the counter staring at the empty parking lot. Feeling the chill crawl up her spine, she heard the soft ring of the door chime, but no one walked in. She stepped forward, slowly called out, "Hello." Only silence answered. She walked toward the door, but the lot was empty, snow falling slow and heavy and untouched. Then she heard it, something dragging across the floor in aisle 3. She turned quickly but saw nothing, just the usual cheap toys and plastic decorations, half fallen from their hooks. She reached for her phone, but it had no signal, and the landline behind the register was dead. She walked down aisle 3, step by step, each sound louder than the last. Her breath visible in the freezing air. At the far end, something moved. A shadow slipped between shelves faster than she could blink. Her chest tightened. "Dale," she called again, but her voice cracked. No answer. She picked up a metal rod from the supply box near the back wall, just in case. Then she saw the mirror, a full-length mirror that was never there before, stood between aisle 3 and 4, propped up by nothing. She looked into it and saw her reflection, only her, until it blinked. She hadn't blinked. She stepped back, heart racing. The reflection stayed still, too still. Then its mouth moved. "You should have helped him." Erica stumbled back, knocking down a basket of plastic ornaments, the sound echoing through the aisles. "Who are you?" she whispered. But the reflection didn't speak again. It only smiled. She ran to the staff room in the back door, slamming behind her. She locked it, her breath coming faster, skin clammy. The room was cold. The lights flickered, once, then twice, then died. She turned on her phone flashlight and shined it across the room. Shelves were empty, except for one thing, a shoey single work shoe covered in dried blood. She fell back against the door, trembling. She tried to remember. Had anyone seen Dale since last Friday? He had missed 2 shifts. The manager said he was sick, but no one had called him. No one had checked. Her stomach turned. She had joked about him being creepy, laughed behind his back, never once asked if he was okay. Then the light caught something else, a name tag, Dale, still pinned to a ripped piece of his uniform. Erica felt her throat tighten, her mind racing. Something had happened to him here, and no one cared, not even her. The reflection's words echoed again. "You should have helped him then." She heard the dragging sound again, right outside the staff room door, and a whisper right behind her ear. "You are next." Aisle of echoes. Erica could not breathe. As the whisper crawled down her neck like ice, she spun around. But the staff room was empty, still dark, still cold. Dragging sound had stopped, but the air was thicker, heavier, as if the store itself was holding its breath. She unlocked the door, slowly opened it, just enough to peer out. The hallway was dim, the emergency lights flickering in short, weak pulses. Stepped out, gripping the metal rod tighter. Every shadow, every sound seemed louder, more alive. She walked past aisle 1, then 2, heading toward aisle 3, where the mirror had stood. But it was gone. Only dust and the faint smell of iron remained. Her fingers trembled as she reached the end of the aisle and turned the corner. Aisle 3 was empty. No mirror, no blood, no sign of movement, just silence. And then she saw it, a small smear of red trailing along the floor, leading toward the storage door. She followed it slowly, her breath loud in her ears. The door was open just slightly. She pushed it with the rod and stepped inside. Room was larger than she remembered. The shelves towered higher, the walls stretched further, and the cold was worse. She heard a faint buzzing like a dying fluorescent light, but there were no lights on. The floor creaked beneath her, and the red trail ended in the center of the room, where something lay beneath a torn plastic sheet. She pulled it back. It was a mannequin, one of the cheap ones used for holiday displays, except this one had Dale's face, and it moved, its eyes opened and its lips parted. But no words came. Erica screamed and stumbled back, knocking over a stack of boxes. The buzzing grew louder. Then, the overhead lights flicked on, but they were not normal lights. They were red and in the crimson glow. The shelves began to shake, the shadows stretched and the walls bled. She ran past aisle 456, the store no longer the same. Walls were peeling, the floor cracked, the ceiling dripping with something thick and black. She reached the front door, but it was gone. Only more aisles, endless aisles, each one darker than the last. She turned and ran the other way, calling for help, shouting into the void. And then she saw him, Dale, standing at the end of aisle 9, motionless, eyes sunken, clothes torn, hands shaking. She slowed, approached him cautiously. Dale, he looked up, and for a moment, his eyes were clear. You left me. His voice was broken, soft like a child's. Erica stepped back. I waited. She tried to explain, tried to speak, but her throat closed up. He turned and pointed toward the far wall, where a door now stood, glowing faintly. It will let you leave, but not without a price. What price? She asked. He did not answer, only faded like dust in wind. She walked toward the glowing door, hand on the rod, heart pounding as she reached for the handle. The ground beneath her shifted. She was no longer in the dollar store. She stood in a basement, walls lined with mirrors, all cracked, all showing different versions of herself. In one she was crying, in another screaming, in another covered in blood. Each version stared at her, each one spoke without sound. You knew, you watched, you laughed, you did nothing. Guilt crushed her. The mirrors closed in, and she dropped the rod, falling to her knees. I was scared, she said. I was just trying to survive. One mirror remained unbroken. It showed her standing in aisle 3, watching Dale beg the manager for help. She had turned away. She had laughed. That night was not just another shift. It was the night Dale never came back, and she never asked. White hairs streamed down her face as she whispered his name. The mirrors began to crack one by one until all shattered in a burst of cold wind and darkness. She opened her eyes and stood once more in the center of the store. The lights were normal, the shelves untouched, the air calm, but the clock read midnight, and the door behind her clicked shut on its own. Forgotten file. Erica stood still in the center of the store. As the clock struck midnight, the sound echoing like a heartbeat through the empty aisles, the lights had returned to normal. The shelves were neatly stacked, the floor clean. Mirror gone, but nothing felt right. Her hands were cold, her skin pale, and her breath shallow. She moved toward the counter where her locker was tucked beneath the register. She remembered something Dale once said in passing. If anything ever happens, look in the file drawer beneath the register. She had laughed at the time, thought it was just one of his weird, paranoid mutterings. Now it felt like a warning. She crouched down and opened the drawer. Inside, beneath old receipts and broken pens, she found a thick manila envelope labeled internal use only. Pulled it out slowly, her fingers stiff as she opened it. Inside were complaint forms, photographs, and an old journal. She flipped through the first few pages. Photos of Dale standing near broken cameras, notes scribbled in red ink about missing items, strange sounds, figures in the mirror. Then she found a report dated last year. Employee injury, non-responsive, left overnight in staff room, bruises on neck. Manager claims no knowledge. The name was familiar. It was a girl from high school, Jenna. She had worked one holiday season and then vanished from school, never came back. Erica had heard rumors, but never believed them until now. The next paper was a resignation letter. It was from Dale. I cannot work here anymore. The mirrors are not just glass. The cameras blink on their own. The back door leads to places that should not exist. I begged you to shut this place down. Erica sat back, her hands shaking. She realized now Dale had been trying to protect himself, trying to leave before it was too late. But no one listened. The manager, not the district, not her. She had seen him losing sleep, heard him mutter to himself, seen his hand tremble when he clocked out, and she ignored it. She placed the papers back and stood up. Her reflection in the register screen looked different, her eyes darker, her expression blank. Then it blinked again without her moving. She turned around quickly, but nothing was there. A sudden gust of wind blew through the aisle. She followed it. It led her past aisle 7 toward the storage hallway where a door marked private had always been locked. Now it was open. She stepped through slowly. The hallway was lined with old shelves piled high with dusty boxes, but at the end was something new, a mirror, not like the others. This one was tall, ancient, its frame carved with symbols, its surface fogged over like breath on cold glass. As she stepped closer, the fog cleared and she saw Dale standing behind her. She turned around, but the hallway was empty. The mirror rippled and the scene changed now. She saw herself laughing with co-workers, ignoring Dale sitting alone. Then it changed again, Dale standing outside the manager's office, pleading, his reflection behind him slowly turning into something twisted, something hollow. The mirror flashed and showed Erica holding the rod, standing over something broken, something breathing. She gasped and stepped back. No, I did not hurt him. Mirror cracked slightly. She tried to run, but the door slammed shut behind her, the shelves collapsing in on themselves. The air grew colder, the light dimmed, and the mirror spoke. You watched, you knew, and now you see. A shadow rose from the glass, taking form, tall and silent, with empty eyes. It reached for her. She raised the rod and swung, but it passed through like smoke. You cannot fight what you buried. She fell to the floor, shaking, the rod clattering beside Harry. Want to make it right. The shadow paused, its head tilting slowly. Then, find him and face what you left behind. The mirror shattered, and behind it was a staircase leading downward. She stood, breathing heavily, and stepped into the dark, one step at a time toward the truth. Beneath the floor, Erica stepped onto the staircase, her hand brushing against the cold wall. As she moved deeper into the dark, the air felt heavy and old, like it had not been breathed in years. Each step creaked beneath her weight, the silence around her pressing in from all sides, as if the darkness itself was watching. At the bottom of the stairs, she reached a narrow hallway lit only by a single flickering bulb. Above, the walls were concrete, damp and stained, the floor cracked and uneven. She heard something faint, a soft sob echoing from behind a thick steel door at the end of the hall. Her heart pounded faster as she walked forward, each step louder than the last. She reached the door and slowly turned the rusted handle. The room beyond was cold and wide, filled with broken shelves, shattered mirrors, and a single chair placed under a light bulb, swinging slowly. And in the chair sat Dale, his wrists hung loose at his sides, his head bowed forward, his shirt torn and stained. Erica rushed to him, her voice barely a whisper. Dale, his head lifted slowly, eyes dull, face pale, lips cracked. You came back. She knelt in front of him, hands reaching out. I am sorry. I did not know I should have helped. He looked at her, a flicker of something passing through his eyes. You still can't? She nodded quickly. Tell me how, tell me what to do. He pointed to the far wall where an old mirror hung crooked and fractured, the first one, the one that started it. Erica stood and walked to the mirror, her reflection barely visible through the dirt and cracks. As quiet as she reached out to touch the surface, the glass rippled like water and her surroundings changed. Was no longer in the basement. She stood in the store. On the night Dale disappeared, she saw her younger self talking with co-workers, laughing, ignoring Dale, who sat quietly in the corner, staring into the mirror on aisle 3. Then she saw it, the shadow. It moved behind him, unseen by everyone except Dale. It placed a hand on his shoulder and whispered into his ear. Dale stood and walked to the staff room alone, trembling and silent. No one followed, no one asked, not even her. The vision faded, and she stood again in the basement, Dale still watching her. It took you because no one cared. She said, no, it took me because I cared too much. I saw it, and it knew I was weak. I was afraid. You were not weak. You were alone. Dale looked at her, and for the first time, he smiled just a little. Then you must break it. The mirror must be destroyed, but not with force, with truth. She turned to the mirror again, looked into her own eyes, and spoke. I knew something was wrong, and I looked away. I let you suffer, and I pretended it was not real. I am sorry. The mirror cracked once, then twice, then shattered completely. The room shook, the air screaming with the sound of glass breaking. The shelves fell, the floor split, and the shadows screamed. Erica grabbed Dale, pulling him from the chair. As the ground crumbled around them, they ran through the hallway, up the stairs, the walls crashing behind them. As they reached the store floor, the front door was back open waiting. They burst through it into the snow-cold air rushing over their faces. The store behind them collapsed in on itself. Silently, like it had never existed, they stood in the parking lot, breathless, hearts pounding. Erica looked at Dale. "Are you okay?" He nodded slowly, eyes brighter than before. "I think so." She looked at the sky, snow falling gently now, quiet and soft. "It is over almost." He pointed to the small broken sign that once said welcome. Now it read remember. And then he vanished, not with pain, not with fear, but with peace. Erica stood alone. Snow falling, the wind calm, and for the first time in years she felt light. She walked away from the ruins, not with guilt, but with purpose. The door that opens. Erica walked through the snow, her footsteps slow, her breath rising into the cold night air. The ruined store behind her, now nothing more than scattered wood and silent shadows. Did not look back. The town was quiet. Christmas lights blinked gently in the windows of faraway homes. But here in the corner of that forgotten strip mall, there was only stillness, only the sound of her heart, no longer racing but steady. She reached her car and opened the door. The keys were still inside. The engine started without protest, as if nothing strange had happened, as if time had folded back to normal. But Erica knew nothing would ever be normal again. She drove for miles, past empty streets, past gas stations, past dark trees that lined the highway, each one reminding her of the night she chose to forget. Dale, the night she walked past his pain, the night she did nothing. Now she had faced it. Now she had spoken it out loud, and the silence that once haunted her was finally broken. She stopped outside a small diner, open, late lights glowing warm through the frosted windows. Inside, she sat alone, ordered coffee, and stared at her reflection in the glass. This time it did not blink. This time it only watched, and in that reflection she saw herself as she truly was. Not perfect, not innocent, but not lost. Waitress placed the cup in front of her and smiled softly. "Long night." Erica nodded yes. "But it is over now." The waitress tilted her head. "You sure?" Erica looked into the coffee, then back at the reflection, then outside. "I am sure." She finished the cup, paid the bill, and stepped outside into the snow again. The road was waiting, but something inside her said go back one more time, not to the store, not to the place where it all happened, but somewhere deeper, somewhere older. She followed the back roads until she reached the house where she grew up. The porch was the same, the steps creaked, the wind touched her face like a memory. She walked inside, and everything was still. She went to her old room and sat on the bed. She opened a drawer and pulled out a photo. It was her and Dale, young, smiling, standing in front of that same store years ago when they both started as new hires. She had forgotten this moment. She had buried it. Now she let herself feel it, the fear, the shame, the weight. She placed the photo on the nightstand and lay down. The mirror on the wall reflected the soft light of the moon and nothing else. She closed her eyes and slept, and in her dream she stood once more in the aisle where it began. But this time the lights were warm, the shelves full, the air clean, and Dale stood beside her, no longer tired, no longer broken. He looked at her and said, "Thank you." She nodded. "I will not forget." Again the dream faded, and morning came with sunlight and birdsong. Erica woke with tears on her face, but they were not cold. They were soft. She had faced the darkness. She had walked through it and come out changed. She stepped outside as the sun rose above the hills, the snow melting slowly, the air crisp with new beginnings. And somewhere deep in the woods where the store once stood, nothing remained. No sign, no shelf, no shadow, only silence, a clean silence. Not the kind that hides, but the kind that heals. The kind that follows a story that has finally found its end.